right. Well, we'll take a brief moment, let ourselves get to the live, and I think we're good to go. So I
Okay.
am so overwhelmed, so happy to be here with the one and only Lindsey Stirling. I cannot thank you enough, Lindsey, for joining us today for this very important conversation around eating disorders, awareness, recovery, and living your why. So first and foremost, how are you doing?
I'm doing really good. Thank you for asking. I'm really excited to be here. I love the work you guys do, and it's something I believe so strongly in. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I have to tell you, it was quite a bit ago that I heard you share openly about your experience with your eating disorder and being a fan. Have seen you multiple times live.
Oh,
It was
wow. Thank you.
it was just very empowering as someone of lived experience myself, just seeing someone with a platform like yours, especially with your willingness around sharing your story. So my first question to you in today's conversation is why was it important? Why is it important to share about your personal experiences with mental health and eating disorders?
You know, I I felt like it was actually really important for me to share my story because when I went through my eating disorder, it was so apparent that like I didn't know anything about it. I
Yeah,
didn't know anybody who'd been through it. I knew people who had been through it, but I didn't know they'd been through it and
yeah,
they didn't know I was going through it. And I even look back at when I was in college, I think out of the six of us that lived together, three of us were struggling with some sort of eating disorder secretly.
yep.
And I just remember feeling so alone. I remember thinking, how did I become one of the crazy people in this life? And so anyways, I felt like it was really important once I got to a good place with it. I was like, I need to share my story so people don't feel like they're alone, so people don't feel like they're crazy. Yeah.
I really, I think so often, and I do have this like inner like dialogue when it's like people can go through something and never talk about it again, close the door, and it's absolutely fine. And then there's people that will go through something and then utilize it to pay it forward and make a difference. And was there a particular time, as you were, growing in your career where you thought, I want to talk about this and why, what made you decide to do this?
Yeah, I feel like as I started out on my artist journey, my first album was kind of like, here's experimentation. It was mostly music. The music wasn't really written about much. It was just, I think this sounds pretty. I think this sounds cool. This one's fun. And when I went to write my second album, I thought to myself, I had never thought when I wrote that first album that I don't know, was anybody going to listen to it? Who knew? And so the fact that people had gravitated towards it and that I'd gotten to stand on stage in front of people and share these songs, and I thought, this next go around with this new album, a new chance to share on stage, it's like I would like to say something that matters. I would like to say something I believe in because I've got this audience, and so it was a very like thought out choice. And and it's interesting because it came from a place of like wanting to share, wanting to give, wanting to
Mhm.
be authentic, but I had no idea that that would actually be such a uniting factor between me and my fans. And I think that
Yeah.
really the thing that changed my career a lot was when I wrote Shatter Me, this very
Mhm.
vulnerable, scary song to write
Mhm.
about an eating disorder. I feel like that's the song that went from, oh, I like that little violinist, she's kind of fun, to like, I I understand her, she understands me, and it's to this day something I'm so grateful I chose to do for because it created community rather than
It did.
fans.
It did. It did. And I have to tell you, there's so many amazing playlists out there that are, inspirational music, recovery playlists. That song is on everyone's playlist. And it's
Oh,
just, listening to it, engaging in it, it really is motivational. And I just want to, pop on onto the chat and just share with you, Lindsay, you are a big reason for my eating disorder recovery this past year. Just wanted you to know. So I
wow.
think it's really important for you to know how many lives you're touching and how much hope you're bringing to so many in a place that can be very dark and very isolating, just like how you said. And so, yeah, you started to answer this, but how did music play a role in your recovery? How was it helpful?
In my case, it was it was almost like the opposite. It was the lack of music in my life. Like music is something that's always been a huge part of my life. Playing music, arranging music. It was going to be my profession, and then I was like, no, I'm just going to make it fun. And but it was always such a huge part of my life. But when I was in my eating disorder, it completely fell away. And I
Yeah.
think because I didn't have the mental capacity to put energy into this thing that used to bring me so much joy. And so when I was starting to really figure out that there was an actual problem, it was because I was starting to put the pieces together of what was no longer in my life. One of those things was music. I just had completely let it go. Another thing was friendship. I was like, I don't really have any friends anymore, like deep rooted friends. You have to isolate yourself in order to keep a disease alive in it. So music and relationships was the two big things that made me very aware that like something has changed in my life. I don't know when, I don't know how, but like I need to figure out what's wrong because there's something wrong. And so I think it was the absence that of these things that made me one recognize the problem, but also finally accept once I realized there was a problem that it was worth changing. Because I think a lot of times we're like, no, it's fine. I'm actually not that bad. Like I can, I'm not like, I'm not too thin or whatever you say that you're on the border, but you're fine. But it was the evidence of like the happiness in my life that made me realize didn't used to be like this. I didn't used to be miserable. I didn't used to hate myself. I used to have friends. I used to
Yeah.
have passions. And once all that was gone, it was finally like, I don't care what it takes. Now that I know, I'm ready to change.
That is unbelievable. I really honestly have chills about that because, for so many people that are listening, so many people in the community, it's this, inner dialogue of I'm not sick enough, I'm not bad enough, I'm really not like, that stereotypical person who you think has an eating disorder, which by the way, eating disorders can affect anyone. They can come up in all presentations. But utilizing the fact that it was missing from your life. Music was missing from your life as the thing that was the motivator for you to say, "Hey, I need help and I need to get better." And I think you touched on something along the lines of when you started sharing about your eating disorder through your music, it created the sense of community, which is so beautiful. Because in my opinion, and here at the Alliance, we really believe that healing happens in community. Um, when you think of community and your fans. What does that look like? How does it feel? And why do you think community is so important in the whole healing process?
I'll take just a step back. And when I first was really in the battle of like, do I want to keep doing this? Do I want to keep, trying to recover because this is really hard and it's actually making me feel worse? Like when I was in that place of like, because when you first start to try to get better, it does get so much worse.
Yeah.
Um, and because not only are you now like, you're taking away this comfort
Mhm.
that used to appease you. And anyways, so during that time when I was like, I just don't know if this is worth it. I'm more miserable now than I was before.
Yeah.
I was really fortunate that I was actually at BYU. I was a college student and I had gone to like the counselor center to ask if there was like, like where I could get some therapy. And she told me, well, we actually have an eating disorder group here. It's a group therapy. And she's like, it's very, and she was like, it's very not secretive, but it's very like when you're in there, you don't talk about it outside of that room. It's a very safe place. So
Yeah.
anyways, I remember being so scared to go to that group meeting because I really hadn't said it aloud to anyone besides like my mom. My sister was my roommate. Like I didn't tell anybody.
Yeah.
I told her I was going to a study group, and I remember sitting, like just kind of standing around the elevator for a while, watching some of the other girls go up and being like, she's probably going to the meeting, and like being like, can I get in the elevator to go up there? It was really scary.
Yeah.
But that was truly where my healing began. It was like I had an individual therapist I went to, and I even went to a nutritionist. That did not even a fraction of the work that I got done in that group therapy.
Yeah.
Hearing other women that, and honestly, like none of us looked like what you think a eating disorder patient looks like, where you're like, I'm not that bad. Like my bones aren't sticking out of my, like those pictures you see. None of these girls looked like that. They all looked like normal, like me.
Mhm.
And we all had a very similar viewpoint. And it was weird to hear them talk and be like, that's the way I think. Oh my gosh, I guess this is like a normal but an abnormal thing that we can all work on together. So group therapy was huge for me, and I think it taught me just the importance of community. I'm so grateful for my fan community and the fact that we have different outlets. Like I have a breathwork group that we do together now, and different outlets to try to make it a safe space for my fans online, but also community goes all the way from the a huge level to the micro level. Even just the community I have in LA with my friends, of like my five buddies. Like, so community can have so many different layers to it and so many different reasons, and I'm grateful for it in my life.
I am so happy that you brought up group therapy. So, when I was recovering from my eating disorder, I didn't have access to care. It just wasn't in the cards for me. And so I started going to AA meetings, even though alcohol was never my drug of choice. But I wanted to be in a space where people spoke my language, where someone could be talking and for you to say, "Oh my gosh, me too," or it's like, "How do you know exactly how I'm feeling?" And so when I laid the groundwork to start the Alliance, I was like, I want to create groups. And, back then I couldn't even, put into the concept of a virtual space. But I was like, I want to be in an actual space where I didn't feel so isolated. And then fast forward to today, we have 21 free weekly therapist-led support groups
Wow.
virtually and in person. And we have people from all 50 states and 88 countries around the world that attend. And what is the most beautiful thing is you have someone who is 18 and someone who's 90. And there is such this beautiful like thread that's woven between everyone. Because even though no two struggles are the same, it's exactly what you talked about this community of someone saying, "Oh my gosh, you are not alone. I feel that way too." It's a game changer. So I'm so happy that you were able to experience that because I really do have to agree with you that it's a game changer on the journey to recovery. It really, really is.
Absolutely. And I think one of the best like feeders for an eating disorder is the isolation.
Yeah.
And it's the fact that you feel like nobody could understand. You feel like you're all alone. And so when you step into a group and you hear people saying the same thoughts that you're thinking throughout your entire day, those looping thoughts,
Yeah.
it's this huge, like, I'm not alone.
Yes.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, these things that I've held inside, I've never told anybody, she thinks them too. Like it kind of takes off this facade of this lie that the eating disorder tells you that you have to keep it secret. It has to be yours. Nobody else would understand.
Yeah.
And that's what like propels an eating disorder. So being able to, and I remember even the first time I went to therapy, not even group therapy, my therapist started talking about my own thoughts to me. And I was just like, how does she know this? Like
Like,
it was
Lord, how are you seeing me?
how do you know this? Like, and it was, I remember she said to me, like, Thanksgiving was approaching, and she was like, are you going home for Thanksgiving? And I was like, I am. And she said, well, what's your plan?
Mhm.
I was like, what do you mean, what's my plan? And she's like, I'm sure you have a plan for the day. You're gonna have a huge meal presented in front of you. I bet you have, and it was like shocking to realize that I didn't even realize it, but I did have a full forced plan of
Yeah.
how I was gonna get through that day and what I was gonna do. And so sometimes it's all about just being able to realize that somebody else, a therapist, knew exactly what I was gonna do because she's had patients do it over and over again. You're like, oh my gosh, I'm not alone in this at all.
Yeah, it's almost as if, we have these unbelievable walls that we've built, the eating disorder has built, and community connection, having access to care and support, they create these beautiful cracks where light starts to come in, and that light is just enough hope to have you take another step or make it through another moment. And so it's really phenomenal how everything about the eating disorder convinces you that you cannot talk to anyone, no one would understand, you need to like do this in isolation. But yet, when you open yourself up to community and to care and support, that's really where healing happens. And then you don't feel so alone, which is just so important. But, something that I'm reminded of a lot is, a lot of individuals with eating disorders are very black or white, all or nothing, very like, and my mom used to call me, I wasn't type A, I was like type triple A personality, is what she would say.
Mhm.
And yet, the journey to recovery from an eating disorder is not linear. It's not like one day you wake up and you're like, oh, I'm done with this eating disorder. And then you live happily ever after. It's messy and it's not perfect, but it is so amazing. So, what was your recovery process like for individuals that are in the struggle right now? How was it for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think the most important thing to remember is it's going to get worse before it gets better. It's really painful to like let go of this weird comfort. And I think one of the best books I read was Life Without Ed. And
Mhm.
I think it just really helped me gain a perspective of like being able to see that this eating disorder was like a dysfunctional relationship that would be with me in the back of my head my whole life, and that you just have to learn to put it in its corner and put it out there. And also naming it, making it most personified helped me to realize that I'm not the broken piece. The eating disorder has come and
Yeah.
it's infiltrated into my life and my brain. It's the broken piece, not me. Like you, everyone listening, you are whole. You are amazing. You are wonderful. You are not broken. You never will be broken. But there's this like parasite that has come in and it's taken over you. And that's the broken part. So I think that was a huge thing for me to give myself forgiveness when I did have bad days and, realize that I need to talk to Ed, my eating disorder, about this and be like, I don't deserve that. And I feel like in the beginning it's so hard because you feel like everything you're saying is a lie because you've clocked it in your brain as truth for
So long.
so long. But eventually, as you keep going through just the grit of saying it, even if you don't believe it, it's like you feel like you're walking through the motions. You feel like you're lying to yourself as you say these like, "I am enough. I don't need, my food doesn't control me." Like all these mantras that I
Mhm.
think you can build for yourself, they're gonna feel like lies. But eventually, if you say them enough, they start to like ring as like maybe this is true. Like it just takes a while for your brain to stop processing them as lies because they're so. But anyways, in my recovery, I think it wasn't linear. It definitely was like ups and downs, and you'd have a good month, and then you'd start to like
Yep.
feel bad about yourself. And I think to this day, I am a very, very like high functioning human. I don't, my eating disorder does not control my life anymore. It hasn't for a really long time. That does not mean that I don't have to be vigilant still, and realize that honestly, for me, it shows up when I'm stressed. When I feel like my life is a little bit out of control, which
Mhm.
honestly happens quite a lot for all of us.
Yeah.
So it's like these times when you just have to realize, like, I have to be more careful right now. I have to give myself more grace. I have to be more aware that I'm going to start to like patterns. They're still there. They're in the back of my head. I'm not going to let them come back. And also, I realized for me, and I don't know if this is for everybody, my eating disorder shows up in really weird ways. Sometimes, like the same way once upon a time I restricted food, I went through a period of time where I started to treat sleep the same way. It was like if the average person needs 8 hours of sleep, I bet I could get away with 6. And then I kept whittling it down till I was so, and then all of a sudden it clicked. I was like, this is my eating disorder manifesting in a totally different
Yeah.
restrictive way and cut that out. Like cut that out. So it's funny how it's shown up in different ways, and I just have gotten so much quicker at recognizing it. It used to take me a lot longer to be like, "Oh shoot, this is Ed. He's back." Like, and no wonder I'm feeling this way about myself. I've gotten so much quicker at recognizing it and just being aware and being open to talk about it with now a bunch of safe people in my life, from my sisters to my mom. I'm not sharing it with everybody when I'm going through a hard time, but I have my safe people, including like a therapist that I can go to help me with these like occasional dips.
Yeah. That was so beautiful. And I tend to say this a lot, we recover to life, not utopia. And it's not going to be sunshine, bunnies, and rainbows every single day. There's going to be some hard times, there's going to be some better times. But it's so damn worth it. And you had said so much that was so important and amazing. Something that I remind myself all the time is I don't have to like something to do it. I don't have to want to do something to do it. And I feel like so much of the beginning of my journey to recovery was like going through the motions, being very mechanical. And also, I also just love this beautiful imagery of saying, I hear you, and I'm going to choose to do something different when that voice starts to become a little bit louder because we live in a world that could be very supportive of an eating disorder voice, and there's so much unknown and so much chaos that's going on. So I think being, diligent and being aware, and also giving yourself space to be a human, and reaching out, because we are not supposed to do this on our own. And that's really, I think, the most important thing. So, along those lines, what would you say are some of the best parts of your recovery?
Those are the things that I remind myself anytime, even when I was like a year out of recovery, those little windows of good times that I was having when, you'd be like, I'm doing pretty good. Oh no, I'm not doing good. Okay, I'm doing better. Oh, it was those little glimpses of like the good that life has that I had lost when I was in the eating disorder. Those are the things that gave me the courage to keep going, because for me it's like the fact that my relationships can be so much deeper now because you do not have room for anyone else in your brain or to be aware of anyone else when you are consumed by an eating disorder. It is all consuming. There's no room for anyone else. It's an extremely selfish disease, not by exact choice, but
Yep.
you cannot go. There's no other way around it. It's a very assumed disease. And so you
Mhm.
don't have the capacity to be kind or to be like aware of anybody else. So
Absolutely.
the depth of my relationships now, like with my family members and with my friends, and the ability I have to be there for people, the ability I have to to lean in and enjoy when I want to like eat something special at my friend's birthday party, and I don't have to think about like how I can hide. You know, I don't have to
Yeah.
constantly make plans in my own head. So I think that honestly, the beauty that keeps me healthy is from the very beginning of recovery, the fact that I reminded myself it's worth it because of my sister. It's worth it because of her. It's worth it because I actually went out with friends last week and I had a good time
Yeah.
for the first time in years. Like, and
Yeah.
I enjoyed myself. It's worth it because of that. So for me, relationships, I think, was the truest form of like motivation.
Yeah, we had this whole campaign. We just finished Eating Disorders Awareness Week, the last week of February, and we had this whole campaign about recovery wise and like why do you do this? Like why do you go through these almost it feels impossible moments? And you just said it so beautifully because it's those people, those places, those things, there's the values, the dreams, the aspirations that are sometimes hard to see when you are in the midst of the eating disorder, but they're so there. And it feels like it will never get better, but keep on putting one foot in front of the other. Keep on keeping on, as they say, because it's so, so worth it. So, using maybe your own catalog or maybe another song, if you could describe your journey in one song, what would it be?
Well, I'm completely biased. I mean, it would have to be Shatter Me.
I mean, that's what I'm hoping.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the song that I wrote about it, and it was and you know, it was written from a very specific memory I had when I was at I think I was like at the mall, and I was buying a friend like a gift, and as I was checking out I saw this little snow globe of a ballerina that was stuck in there, and this is at the time when I was in the middle of like the trenches of trying to recover, and I saw this ballerina and she was so perfect and she looked so flawless, and she was just spinning endlessly, never changing, never moving, protected by this little snow globe. And I just felt like, I wonder if she's happy in there.
Yeah.
I like over personified this little toy ballerina, but I just was like, I wonder if she wishes that she could change. Like, and it just felt like me. Like I was this porcelain glass doll that on the outside looked like I had it all together. I looked, I looked great. I could smile for everybody, but at the same time, I was like literally screaming inside. And thinking about this little ballerina, I'm like, is that snow globe protecting her or is it a cage? And that was what the eating disorder was for me. So writing, or not crystallize, writing Shatter Me and getting to personify that not only in the song lyrics, but also in the music video, being able to bring it to life and show that sometimes like this perfect shell that's around us, it's not just the snow globe, it was actually her own porcelain shell, and she had to let it crack in
Mhm.
order to realize that she was actually alive.
So, how was writing that song and doing that music video as it intertwined with your recovery? I mean, I can only imagine it was so unbelievably healing for you.
It was very healing. And, and at the time when I wrote it, I was writing about the past. I'm a big believer in before I'm ready to share anything with the world, I have to be okay with it, and I have to be in a, not that we can't share with like friends and family, but I was like, this was a journey I wanted to at least have grasp on it before I shared it. And so I was in a pretty good place. Like I was several years out of my you know, my rock bottom.
Yeah.
And yeah, but it was healing. It was this beautiful reminder because I think that's important to remind yourself why you healed in the first place so that when those moments come that try to pull you backwards, you're like, no. Like I believe in my story, I believe in my journey, I believe in sticking with this long term, like for my life. And so, the fact that I now get to perform that song almost every night when I'm on tour, for years now, like Shatter Me has become like I always perform it. And it's empowering, and it's always been empowering in different ways as it's grown with me through the years.
I have to shamelessly share at one of your concerts you started playing that and in the row in front of me maybe three seats over there was a young woman with her dad that was sitting there and you started playing that song and she like put her head in her hands and just started sobbing and the dad put his arm around her and I just sat there and I'm like, I was about 15 years into the alliance at this point and I had this moment and I like got up and I sat behind her and I said, it gets better. I promise you it gets better. And she just looked at me and she's like, how did you know? And I'm like, I know. And so I can only imagine how many of those little girls are in audiences across the globe when you're performing that song. So that's a memory that I will always hold with me. And it, makes me a little teary-eyed just because it was just such a significant moment. Because, going back to like the beginning of our conversation is it really sucks to be alone and it really sucks to struggle. And then when you just have that little bit of hope or that person that says it's going to get better or that you can, break free of this glass, like you're going to get there. And it's going to be so much better than you ever thought and so much more worth it than you ever thought. So just wanted to share that with you.
Beautiful. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. So tell us about the Upside Fund because it's amazing what you've created.
Yes, the Upside Fund started with just the intent of paying people's medical bills or helping people, eliminate medical debt. Just from some of the experiences I've had with some of my loved ones, it was important for me to help people be able to pay for the care that, they didn't choose, they have to have. And then it's kind of evolved since then. Now we're focusing more not just on like eliminating medical debt or paying bills, but there's such a systematic problem with the way the system runs. And so kind of trying to move into a little bit of policy change while also, focusing more on how to prevent healthcare,
Mhm.
like with equitable healthcare options, with mental health accessibility, like mental health and physical health are so intertwined.
Yep.
So just really even looking into possible policy in the future of how we can make this place of healthcare a better place for people in the States. And that's why we were excited to talk to you because obviously mental health is a huge part of that. And, and as we know, it's something that I think most people struggle with in
Yeah.
some degree or another.
Yeah, and I think, you talk about, inequities and access to care, there's about 29 million Americans that will experience an eating disorder in their lifetime. That's one in nine Americans. And out of everyone who struggles with an eating disorder, more than 70% will not get access to the care that they need and that they deserve. And so for many people, our groups that we have at the Alliance are the only care and support that they will get. And so we are so grateful that you and the Upside Fund have so generously agreed to match up to $20,000, which is phenomenal and amazing. And something that I think is so full circle is with the funds that we raise collectively, that will actually fund one free weekly therapist-led support group for 1 year, which will welcome around 3,000 people over the year. And so incredibly grateful. Thank you so much for believing in the work that we do. And you can find the link in the chat. But I mean, Lindsay is so generously matching dollar for dollar up to 20,000. So we thank you so much for that. Thank you for allowing us to provide this life-saving care to so many people.
Of course, I was really excited to partner with you guys, and this is obviously something I believe in. And I know that I don't think I'd be the person I am today. I don't think I'd be the entertainer I am today. I don't think I would have the happiness in my life today if I hadn't had access to that free group therapy,
Mhm.
and then parents that at the time could help provide a therapist for me. So like it's so important. It's so, so important. We all just need a little bit of help along the way. Like we
Yeah,
shouldn't be expected to do this by ourselves.
yeah. That's 100% right on. And my last question for you, and I promise I'll let you go after that, is if you could go back in time and talk to Lindsay in the grips of her eating disorder, what would you tell her?
Oh, I would give her the biggest hug and I would promise her that this is worth it. I would promise her because I think that's the big question you ask when you're in that moment and you're like looking in the mirror trying to tell yourself that you're beautiful and like, that like almost like trying to undo the lies in your head.
Yeah.
And I used to do that. I'd sit and I'd look in the mirror when my roommates were all gone and I would be like, you know, you are not defined by the things you eat. You are beautiful, you are strong, you are smart. And I would like literally cry as I would like look myself in the eye and say it. And if I could go back in time, I'd be like, all of that is true. Like all of it's true. I promise you. And I promise that someday you'll know it, and just reminding that it's worth it and it's going to get better and it's going to get so much easier. And there's nothing more important that you can do with your time because it really did become like a part-time job. Like that's the time commitment it took to get better. And I was also going to school. I was also working. It was really hard to find that time to dedicate to my brain, whether it was reading books, going to therapy, going, doing personal work in my own head, like all the things. I would tell myself, this is the best investment you can make in yourself, and it will only get easier. I promise. Today is the hardest day. tomorrow's going to be a tiny bit easier.
That is so, so true. And I selfishly would love to take, you back and show that Lindsay you where you are today and all the healing and all the connection and all the light that you bring out for so many people. And if anybody who's listening, please connect to the Alliance, to our services. We have, as I said, 21 groups a week. We also hold the national helpline that's open Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We connect you to care, to clinicians, to therapists, to programs, and even just to talk if you think that you have something going on. Lindsay, any last words before we wrap up this conversation today?
I just want to say thanks for everyone who joined and, all those words that I said to myself when I was younger. Like, I hope that that's true about each one of you. Like, I hope you know how strong, how beautiful, how smart, how, like, you should never let anything else define you that comes from, like, this Ed character. Like, those are lies. You are whole. You are worth every bit of investment you make into yourself. And you can get better, I promise.
I love that. And I think that those are such beautiful words to end on. So, on behalf of all of us here at the National Alliance for Eating Disorder, thank you, Lindsay, for being who you are. Thank you for working with us. I hope we get to do much more in the future, but thank you for being a light. And here's to living a life beyond eating disorders. So, thank you all so much. Thank you for joining us. Please reach out if you need, and we will see you all really soon. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
All right. That's it.